Alright, so let's get started. What I'm trying to do today is make sure that a lot of people talk about resume. Today I'm going to talk about, we have talked about resume also, you can check on our YouTube channel. But what we are going to do today is we are going to make your GitHub in a way where it gets shortlisted, right? So this is the stage when how the recruitment workflow works is you apply to a position, a recruiter looks at your resume and then forwards it to a hiring manager. So hiring manager is more of a technical person who's going to deep dive into your skills and your profile. So hiring manager is probably the one who's going to open your GitHub, right? And that person is technical, so they can understand what kind of projects you have done, what kind of languages you have used, what kind of complexity is involved in your projects, right? Let's get started. So this is the basic introduction. A bit about me. First of all, how many of you are second years? Oh, nice. And third years? A few. How many of you guys have used TopStock before? I think it is mandated by our college. Maybe in third year. Sorry? Okay. So in third year, probably when you go to third year, you will hear back from someone to register. A bit about myself. I graduated from IIIT Hyderabad. Worked in a couple of product companies. I managed both StopStock and Reczee. StopStock is something that you should definitely register if you are in your second year. Reczee Talent Hub is another product which we have launched to get you internships and jobs. So there also you can create your profile if you find some internships which are useful for your interest, you can apply there as well, right? This is a quick introduction there. Today's agenda, what I'll be covering in your GitHub profile is 5 things. One is README, another is commit messages, code quality, the contributions, and your profile page, right? So I'll be quick in each of these. We'll keep more time for your questions. So let's get started with readme.md. Now, readme.md, you must be aware if you had created your GitHub repository somewhere. GitHub also does it as by default, it creates a readme for you. But this is very important for any hiring manager who's looking at your profile, right? If they see 5 repositories that you have contributed to, they'll try to see what the project is about, right? So, first thing that you have to include in your README is basically what the project is about, right? If you don't include that, probably if a recruiter is looking at your GitHub profile, they don't know what project is about, right? If it's a Django project, just write about Django, or if it's a basic web application, write about the end user functionality, what it's going to be about, and so on and so forth, right? What other things that you should include in your README is basically showcasing what the project is, right? So usually you would know better how to set up your project. Now, none of the recruiter or the hiring managers are actually going to clone your repository and then basically run your code and see what's going to be the end output, right? So the idea is showcase appropriately is you should include deployment links. So this is like completely no-brainer to anyone who's reviewing your profile. If you include this, your chances increases by at least 60 to 70% by them just opening that link quickly, seeing what kind of projects you have done and what kind of UI, or in case that it's an Android application, you can include screenshots, you can include a YouTube video demo. That would help the recruiter as well as the hiring manager to see what's the end user functionality, right? Apart from that, you have to include setup instructions, right? This is for an advanced person who's looking at your resume. They would try to understand what kind of dependencies are there in your repository. For example, say you're using a Python 3 project in Django, so you would include Python 3.7 plus as one of your dependencies and so on. So setup instructions is a must, right? I'm not sure if everyone can see the examples. I'll be sharing the slides, but the first one is basically add a README. This is the default state. If you create a repository, this is where it would be. Most of your repositories right now, if you have created on GitHub, would be in this state. My goal is to make sure that it's not in this state. If it is in this state, it's not helping anyone. Definitely not you. For recruiter, it might be that recruiter might want to see your resume and shortlist. But if they are on your GitHub page and if they see a add README here, they are probably not going to understand what the repository is about, right? Second is the basic README that any functional, any language or any framework provides by default. This you would be aware of. A lot of students were working on the React Mon stack, right? So in that, if you open a React application, by default React pre-fills it with this README, right? So this is a direct put off for any hiring manager, because this is not giving any details about your project, what kind of setup instructions are there, what kind of complexities are involved in your project, right? So these are some of the bad examples of your README. I'm pretty sure 70 to 80% of you would not be editing your README, because in college usually there's not much requirements of a README. But I just want to give you a heads up so that if you start including, your chances of getting shortlisted becomes much higher, right? This is a good example of a README. So, for example, say a project's name is Question Paper Generator. It talks about what the project does. It talks about some of the nitty-gritties about it. For example, Latexify is another open source repository. So it talks about what the Python package does. It also has some screenshots in it, and it also explains the end user functionality, right? So these are some of the good examples of a README, right? Believe me, if you have something concrete in your README in all of your repositories, that would increase your chances of getting shortlisted, right? So from now on, if you create any repository, your first goal is to make sure that you update the README with the end user functionality at least. And over time, your project would evolve. Over time, your project would have more functionalities. So you should make sure that you keep on updating these READMEs, right? So that would help in making it look good, right? This is another example of having all the dependencies listed here and how to get started if someone wants to contribute to your repository, right? So that was on the README part. Coming to commit messages. Before that, how many of you use Git repositories right now? How many of you use GitHub right now? That's a good number. That's a good number. Is it for courses or is it for open source contributions? Open source. Sounds good. So you must be aware of commit messages since you guys know Git and GitHub. So commit messages is what tells any code change that you do, right? So if you do any code changes, you keep on committing code. So what you should do is you should make sure that the message tells what are the changes, right? And a lot of students, what they do is they just keep on adding the same commit message again and again without understanding what the commit is for, right? So the commit is for telling what change you are doing and pushing to the remote repository, right? So that is on that part. Apt length, by apt length I mean it should have at least 10 to 70 characters. This is a good enough phrase that you can write to understand what kind of changes are made. This is something which will be automatically mandated if you work in an industry project. But when you're working on your self projects, if a hiring manager opens your Git repository and it only shows init repo, even if you have been working for 2 years, it just shows that you don't understand Git, right? So especially when you're in second year, third year, you're not comfortable with Git, so that makes it more prone to making these mistakes. So it's good that you make sure that you have this habit of having correct length of commit messages, right? And sometimes there are cases when you want to include more information about the commit if there is some edge case that you're handling, or if there's something which was a different kind of requirement. So you can add more lines there, so that's fine, but usually stick to 10 to 70 lines, right? So these are some of the bad examples. So if you write bug fix, if you have 100 bug fixes, you cannot write just bug fix. So your goal is to actually explain what the bug was and how you fixed it, right? Init is something that you can use for the initial commits, but after that, every commit should show what the commit was about, right? These are some of the other bad examples. And as I was talking, I reviewed one of the candidates' profile and figured out that these are some things that you write update readme, right? So instead of this, you can probably write added setup instructions, added new deployment links, so on and so forth, right? So that is something that you can keep in mind. These are some of the good examples, like fix incorrect password error message. add support for helper text for input fields, so on and so forth, right? So these are just contextual based on how your project works, but you can try to give that description, right? Coming to code quality, so this is probably one of the biggest thing that hiring manager is going to see. To be honest, in your college days, even I was, if you open my GitHub and you see my code, it's going to be pretty bad. So the goal here is basically, say you are in your third year and you are applying for internships, right? One easy hack that you can do on all of your repositories is just run a linter, right? I'll explain you what a linter is. Usually, all the languages have various packages, right? And these packages can be like a standalone binary, or it can be like something like add-on to your VS Code or some other editor. So what you can do with that is just run one command and it will format all of your files, right? Format in a way where all the spaces are taken care of, all the indentation is taken care of, all the syntactical kind of things are taken care of, and it will also raise some errors or warnings that it thinks that it's something that you should fix in your code, right? So try to run those linters and fix it before you apply to any company, right? This is like an easy hack for anyone to just run on all the repositories, and running is literally taking 1 second, right? So it's not much effort from your end if you have say 50 repositories also. So try to run that linter and make sure that your code quality, at least from the linter perspective, is correct, right? Apart from that, linter won't suggest you that okay, you have this complicated logic simplified, right? Because linter is just operating at syntax level. So at syntax level, your goal is to at least the first look of a hiring manager to your GitHub code should be good, right? After that, if he tries to read the code, that's a different story altogether, right? So please run a linter. The next one is indentation and spacing. So most of these, if you don't get a linter in your specific project, or if you are working with some other package, so try to make sure that the indentation and spacing are perfect. If you want, I can open any one of your GitHub repos and show you errors in terms of formatting, right? It's not because you are not used to it, it's just that we are more working on the functionality when we are in say second year or third year, right? We don't care about code quality, but this is something that immediately comes up when a hiring manager is looking up, right? So if they have a good code quality project that they see in a candidate's profile, it just highlights from other candidates. Another is short methods. So functions or methods that you write in your project should have short number of lines. So if it has like say 100 lines of code in a single method, it just signifies that you are not that good in modularizing your code. It just shows you that the candidate is just hackily mixing all the code in a single business function and not willing to break down the methods, right? So this helps if if all of your methods in your projects are short. It helps in the shortlisting process, right? Next is add relevant comments. So there are two extremes of candidates who write in their GitHub. So one extreme is they'll write almost after every line they'll write a comment, right? That makes it unreadable. So try to optimize, try to write only the comments which are like core logic. If you are adding something, if you are referring to something else, if you are probably adding a to-do for yourself in the future, try to add these comments because this shows your organizing power in your project, right? So if you are organizing your thoughts in a particular way, just try to write them down in a comments fashion, right? This makes sure that the hiring manager gets a view that this candidate is well versed with what he's doing, he or she is doing, right? As I said, install plugins. A lot of students can just fix all of their code by just installing very basic plugins. Any language that you use would have definitely a lot of plugins in every editor, like in Sublime, in VS Code, in PyCharm. Any editor that you use would have lots of plugins that would auto format your code. So what I mean by auto format is once you say Control S or Command S file, it will auto format all of these code lines that you have added, right? So then you won't even have to worry about making sure that your spaces are correct, right? It will on every save just make sure your project is on the same state, right? So just install plugins if you want to work smartly. That's on the code quality. Coming to contributions, so you must have seen graphs like this on GitHub. So contributions is something which is a great signal of any candidate showing out potential of contributing to some other repository. It can be a famous repository, it can be a friend's project that you are contributing to. Just make sure that you have some contributions to probably say popular projects. If you want to pick, say, if you're using some node package, you can open their issues on GitHub and see if there's some easy issue that you can fix, and you can get started with solving those issues, right? So if you have these open source contributions, it becomes a very distinct factor for any hiring manager that this person has done something outside of their coursework and also tried to understand something outside of their comfort zone, right? So that helps if you contribute to popular projects. As I said, it's okay to contribute to side projects as well. So if some of your friend is working on any idea, you would sort of want to contribute and also learn by the way. So both of these contributions help in your shortlisting process, right? A lot of students I see now is basically having like a lot of private contributions, right? You might have projects which are say you don't want to say it to the world, but don't have all of your contributions as private, right? If you have a calendar graph like this and you have all of these as private, it's going to not help you anywhere, right? The hiring manager would think that you have only one repo where you are committing every day and it's an empty commit, right? They have all the right to do have that as a justification, right? So try to, at least in college level, you don't have such stealth or secrecy kind of thing. Try to keep your projects open so that this helps in your shortlisting process, right? That's on this part. Consistency is another thing. So if anyone opens a GitHub profile with these green dots distributed in this way, it's going to give a good impression for sure, saying that the candidate is going to be consistent in whatever he or she is doing, right? So try to not fake this. So a lot of candidates right now solve some lead code problems and they just keep on uploading on GitHub, right? That is not the right use of GitHub. It might be right use of GitHub, but it shouldn't be all of them having just lead code submissions, right? If all of these are lead code submissions, the hiring manager doesn't have any other information apart from your lead code, right? So try to have consistency, but with projects which mean it's okay if it's your projects, right? If you want to work on some side project, it's okay if you do that. This just shows the consistency, right? This sort of, you should start early. Second is the best time. You have decent enough time outside of college that you can work on, and then also work on your GitHub contributions, right? The last part which I want to talk about, which is the most important part, is profile page. So this is the first page when someone clicks on your resume's GitHub link and opens this page. So in the profile page, what you need to do is you want to make sure the pinned repositories on your profile page are only the ones which are relevant, only the ones which you want to highlight, only the ones which you want the hiring manager to open the repository and see what the repositories are, right? And for these repositories, you need to follow all the code quality guidelines, all the README guidelines which I talked about earlier, right? Try to not have empty forks. So forks is something that people just fork randoms in Mozilla or Python or any other open source repository, but don't contribute there. So if you don't contribute there, it's called an empty fork, right? So if there is empty fork, there is no need of pinning that, right? Because you haven't contributed. The next is only have impactful projects. As I said, these are the projects most likely are the ones which are going to be opened. The hiring manager is evaluating 50 profiles at a time, right? So if these 50 profiles are there, you cannot expect a hiring manager to have at least 5-10 minutes of view per candidate, right? So they'll just quickly glance through all the repositories that they see in your GitHub pinned repository. right? Also, there is a new feature of GitHub where you can add a README. So there are a lot of generators, profile README generators, which could generate your README kind of thing, which is just in the format of your resume. So try to make your most use of this profile README. Try to include mostly all the things that you have in resume and also about your skills, your proficiency, what you are working right now, which year you are in, probably basic information which you want probably to be showcased about yourself. You can include in a profile link, right? And the last is basically you add bio, portfolio link, location, and current company in your left section of GitHub. So try to add like a quick one-liner bio to explain that okay, you are a second year student working on say open source contributor to Python, so on and so forth, right? So try to make it catchy so that it makes the life of hiring manager easier to see what this person is about, and then double click on whichever is the question. And portfolio link is something that if you have a portfolio website of your own, you should definitely include it in your GitHub link so that whenever someone is reviewing, they can also open your portfolio. Right? And location and current company are less relevant, but sometimes when companies are hiring in a specific location, if someone is say hiring in Vijayawada, and if you are in Vijayawada, then it's highly likely that they might shortlist you for further jobs. Right? So try to add these details. I have covered most of the things that I wanted to cover. These are some action items for you. So you can create a profile on Reczee Talent Hub. As I said, you can take assessments there. You can apply to internships and jobs there. Another is we have combined 20 guidelines for your resume. So you can look at these guidelines that we have released. You can follow us on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Telegram. We are decently active and helping with all the guidelines and other things that we have learned across years. And you can also take a resume review on this link, and you can also take a DSA interview from experts from Google, Microsoft, LinkedIn, so on and so forth. So that would help you prepare for interviews if you are interviewing at various places, right? That's mostly it from my side. We can have questions, and then we have a bunch of swags here, so you can pick it up and go back to your hackathon and start coding. Right? Thank you, guys.